Thank you very much, Sam, for inviting me to speak today. Hi, my name is Emma. I've pre-recorded this talk to avoid any technical issues on the day. And I'm going to talk about a newish format of journal article called registered reports. And specifically, I'm going to talk about all the reasons to write one. So I'm going to start off by talking about what registered reports are and how the registered reports process works. And then I'll talk about the benefits of registered reports, both for the community and for the researcher as an individual. But first, a paradox. If I asked you which part of a research study do you believe should be beyond your control, you would likely say the results. And if I asked you which part of a research study do you believe is most important for publishing in top journals and for advancing your career, you would likely also say the results. So don't touch this, but make sure this is amazing. And this is a fundamental conflict. We're supposed to be objective observers of the results. It's important for the research process to report those results regardless of the outcome. That's what's best for research. That's what's best for science. We are not supposed to selectively report our results or massage them and make them appear more impressive. And yet at the same time, we know that in the conventional academic process, this is how we're going to succeed. So there's no overlap between what is best for the individual and what is best for the research community as a whole. So if the needs of the individual and those of the community are misaligned, we run into problems, and researchers are put under pressure to achieve great results. And when you put us under pressure to achieve great results, then we're going to produce them. When our jobs, promotions and tenure rely on publications, and publications rely on interesting results, then we're sure as hell going to give them to you. In this slide, we're looking at the standard deductive process. At each phase in the cycle, there are weak points that are vulnerable to questionable research practices. So, for example, if we look at harking, changing the hypothesis to fit the results, this makes a good story, but it doesn't get us any closer to the truth. So one solution to these questionable research practices is vanilla pre-registration. So pre-registration is where you detail your study in a time-stamped document before you conduct the study. And doing this really helps prevent things like harking, adapting your hypothesis to fit your data, meaning that your hypothesis can never be falsified, and p-hacking, harassing your data until it gives you a positive result. An even better solution is registered reports. So when a research plan undergoes peer review before results are known, the pre-registration becomes a registered report. Registered reports are a type of empirical article where the writing and review process is split into two stages. Stage 1 happens before data collection, and stage 2 after the study is run and the data are analysed. So here's an overview of the process. Registered reports are split into stage 1 and stage 2. At stage 1, you write a manuscript that includes the introduction, the methods and the analysis plan, and you do this before you collect any data. You then submit to a journal, and your stage 1 goes under peer review. So this takes place before any experiments are conducted. And at stage 1 peer review, the reviewers are looking primarily at the importance of the research question. So is that question important to answer regardless of the outcome? They're also looking at the rigour of the methodology and the extent to which the study can answer your research question. The stage 1 manuscript then undergoes the normal review process of revise and resubmit. But the key is that a decision to publish happens before the experiment is run. So this means that results are a dead currency in quality evaluation. And results don't actually carry any information about quality, so they shouldn't be considered in quality evaluations and decisions to publish. All that they can do is introduce bias. So if a study is accepted on the basis of the stage 1, it receives in principle acceptance. And this means that the paper is virtually guaranteed publication in the journal, provided that the authors follow through on the registered methodology. So if the final results are significant, the paper will be published. And if the final results are non-significant, they will be published too. It doesn't matter, because the decision to publish happened before you ran the experiment, and the question was deemed to be important regardless of the outcome. You can then go away and run your study with in-principle acceptance under your belt. So you run your study and then you analyse your data as normal, and you can then start writing your stage 2 manuscript. So the stage 2 manuscript has the introduction and methods just exactly as it did in the stage 1. The only change is that you go from future tense to past tense. You then add the results section and the discussion, and you have a complete stage 2 registered report. Stage 2 registered report then goes back to the journal for a second round of peer review. And at this second stage, the reviewers are looking to see whether you've complied with the protocol. So have you followed the plans that you laid out in your stage 1 registered report? And are the conclusions you've drawn relative to the data? What they're not allowed to do is relitigate on anything from the stage 1. So if they now don't like the results, they can't go back and find a fault with the stage 1 methods. Okay, so that's the registered reports process, and I'm now going to go on and talk about the many benefits of registered reports. Thinking back to the standard deductive process we looked at, and some of the issues were around p-hacking and harking. So p-hacking is the process of manipulating, sometimes unconsciously, the process of statistical analysis until you get a result below the level of statistical significance. So this could be achieved, for example, by dropping an experimental condition, excluding outliers, etc. And harking, which is hypothesizing after the results are known. So harking is basically presenting a post hoc hypothesis that's based on your results, informed by your results, in your research report, as if in fact you had hypothesized it before you had collected data. And registered reports eliminate many of these issues. So if your hypotheses, an analysis plan, complete with how you'll deal with outliers, etc., are laid out in your stage 1, it's not possible to p-hack or hark. And if your study will be published regardless of the results, and without the need for a beautiful linear narrative, then there's also no incentive to p-hack or hark. Just simply report the results, the answer to your research question, warts and all. And there's a really lovely example of this written by Sarah Ann Field called On the Beauty of Publishing an Ugly Registered Report. There's a link to her piece at the end of this presentation. So we've eliminated bias from the researcher side, but making a publication decision before results are known also eliminates bias on the side of the journal. So what the reviewers and editors have to do is review the study rationale and methodology and answer the question, is this or is this not good, rigorous science? And is the question important to answer regardless of the outcome? By answering those questions in advance, we can eliminate publication bias. So this is where statistically significant positive, in inverted commas, findings are likely to be published. And we can eliminate outcome bias. A reviewer cannot reject a paper because they don't like the results or they don't align with the results from their lab. And from early assessments, it looks like registered reports are working as intended. So reporting and publication biases typically favour positive results, and that means that registered reports should produce a greater proportion of negative results compared with regular articles. So on this slide we've got 2 different studies. In the left panel we have a recent analysis of 296 hypotheses published across 113 registered reports in different fields, and they found that only 40% of registered reports report positive results. So 60% report null results, which is approximately 5 times greater than the rate in regular articles. And in the right panel, we have fantastic work published by Anna Schiel and colleagues. They published this year, and they looked at psychology and found that the difference was even more striking. So they found that 96% of regular articles reported positive results and just 44% in registered reports. There's a huge difference. And obviously we can't say that this difference is entirely down to registered reports, but you can follow the link to the article to have a look at the limitations for this study. A third benefit of registered reports is that they incentivise novel projects. So if you have a very time-intensive or expensive or maybe hard-to-reach group, you really want to go into that research knowing that your plans have been reviewed, they've been improved, and that you have in-principle acceptance under your belt. Likewise, a replication is traditionally hard to publish and is likely to engender criticism from the original authors if you don't replicate their results. Of course, registered reports can't stop that from happening, but they ensure that you're conducting the best version of the study and that the results will be published, whatever the outcome. Having an in-principle acceptance might even encourage your university to support you with funding. So with an in-principle acceptance, a novel project turns into a publishable and, in the UK, a potentially referable paper. And one point to note is that while many journals set higher requirements for statistical power or for Bayes factors, there are journals such as Royal Society Open Science that don't set requirements. So that means that registered reports are still suitable for research on hard-to-reach samples. The fourth reason why registered reports are so awesome links into number 3 in terms of focusing resources. So registered reports can help level the playing field. By focusing on the methods at stage 1, registered reports help reduce other distractions that reviewers may look at, such as lab prestige. And the emphasis on the importance of the research question and the robustness of the methods means that a single well-conducted study may be published, and resources aren't needed to rerun studies until they yield the expected positive results. So this should therefore allow smaller labs or researchers with fewer resources to have a better opportunity to publish good, robust work. So reason 5 is about peer review. And here I've used a few tweets to illustrate why reviewer feedback before you run your study is useful. So with traditional post-hoc review, we might get recommendations on using a different dependent variable. Maybe we should have used an extra group or some sort of other measure. Maybe the reviewer suggests that our study is even so flawed that we need to run another one. And some of these reviewer comments we'll be able to attend to, but others we just have to rebut, even if maybe there was something valid in them, because we can't do anything about them now we've run our study. And here these tweets illustrate what happens when peer review is turned on its head and becomes constructive. So issues can now be fixed and reviews become constructive and helpful. From my perspective as an early career researcher, it's also very reassuring to receive these reviews and iron out any kinks and find any confounds before you run the study. And the fact that peer review happens when it's most helpful is really reflected in the rejection rates for registered reports. So about 60 to 70% of stage 1 registered reports are rejected, but with the invitation to resubmit once an issue is addressed. And that, if you hadn't already got the idea, is the beauty of registered reports, because if we haven't run the study, we can go ahead and fix those issues. So only about 5% of studies are rejected outright with no invitation to resubmit. And at stage 1, only 10% of manuscripts are rejected. And that compares to kind of desk rejection rates at top journals that can be 50, 80, even 90%. And so far, rejection rates after stage 2 review are 0. And it's nice to see that peer review isn't just a great experience for the authors, but reviewers also report really enjoying the experience of reviewing registered reports. The main point that these tweets highlight is that reviewers enjoy giving feedback that can actually be acted upon and that can improve the studies. And I really like Bobby Spellman's tweet that we can't run all the studies we would like ourselves, so the next best thing is helping other people run good ones. So number 6 is, I think, an undersold benefit of registered reports. Science is hard and there are lots of anxieties around running studies. So I'm going to focus on the first anxiety because now I think we already know something about the answer to the other 2 questions. So will my design capture the effect of interest? Well, with a registered report, it is more likely that you're going to capture the effect of interest if there is one. And there are several reasons why this is the case. First of all, power. So most journals require 90% power, which means that you have a high probability of detecting the effect if there is one. Registered reports also ask you to use positive controls, and these are basically manipulation checks. So does your manipulation work well enough for your hypothesis to be testable? So a positive control receives a treatment with a known response, so that this positive response can be compared to the unknown response of a treatment. And if the positive control does not produce the expected result, there may be something wrong with the experimental procedure. And when your paper undergoes stage 2 review, the reviewers will be looking to see whether your positive controls or manipulation checks succeeded. And the final point is the focus of reviews and the timing of reviews. So the fact that stage 1 reviews focus on the importance of the research question and the rigour of methodology, and they're not distracted by the results because they're not there, means that reviewers are going to be focusing on whether you have a sound methodology to test your research question. So if we go back to our 3 anxieties, will my design capture the effect of interest? Yes, it's more likely that it will with the registered reports. Will I get a significant result? Doesn't matter. It's going to get published either way. And will my work get published? Yes, it will. Reason 7 to write a registered report is about having that in-principle acceptance on your CV. And this might be particularly important for early career researchers. So I can put this study that I'm working on my CV, and a few people might read it and think, that's great. But most people are going to read it and think, it's not finished. She might not finish it. It might not come to anything. It might not be published. Or if I have an in-principle acceptance, I can put that on my CV, and that's concrete. It has the journal name, and anyone reading my CV knows that it will be published. And it's also a really good motivator for me. So in the darker days of systematic review coding, it's very motivating to remember that I have an in-principle acceptance. And one day, when I finish coding, it will be published. And you can go one step further and receive in-principle acceptance and funding on the same day. That would be a good day. So the registered reports funding model is basically a partnership between funders and journals, whereby a single peer review process offers both funding for a project and in-principle acceptance of the results on the basis of the importance of the research question and the robustness of the methodology. This model is somewhat in its infancy, but there's a lot of work going on around it and around new collaborations and potential new models, and that's focused from Marcus Manalfo's lab, where it includes Jackie Thompson and Katie Drax, amongst others. And you can take a look at Marcus's editorial for further information. Reason 9 to write a registered report is that registered reports are the future. So they were launched in Cortex in 2013, and it took 5 years to get from 1 to 100 adopters. And since then, it's taken just 1 year to get from 100 to 200 journals that offer registered reports. It's important to note that journals that offer registered reports do so on top of the other standard types of article that they already offer. There's just one journal that offers only registered reports. So there are now some big hitters such as Nature Human Behaviour, PLOS Biology, and all of the BPS journals that have signed up for registered reports, and more in the pipelines. And we have participating journals from all areas of sciences. So in the life and medical sciences, there are journals that cover neuroscience, psychology, biology, cancer research, veterinary science, etc. Social sciences across political, economics, finance, and in the physical sciences, there are journals in areas of chemistry, physics, and computer science. And for those of you that are interested in journal impact factors, registered reports are cited at or above the respective journal impact factor. Registered reports are beginning to be recognised within formal systems for evaluating research quality. In the UK, the 2021 Research Excellence Framework, or REF, the regular national exercise for assessing research quality and distributing public funds, registered reports are specifically noted as an indicator of research rigour. And that in turn means that authors that publish registered reports can attract funding for their institutions. And institutions are also starting to signal their support for registered reports. So last year, UCL published a statement of transparency in research in which they strongly encourage researchers to use registered reports where appropriate. And this sentiment is echoed by learned societies such as the BPS. And just when you thought you got through a talk without any mention of the virus, number 10, if you can't collect data now, use this time to write a registered report. So we know that within the workflow of registered reports, we're really front loading the work. And now we can use this to our benefit. If we can't collect data, we can plan for when we can. So you can take this time to write your introduction, plan your methodology, and write your analysis plan. And that means that when you do get in principle acceptance and when you do get to a time where you can collect data, hopefully data collection will be quicker because you have everything planned out, and certainly data analysis will be quicker because you have your analysis plan laid out. If you're using R, you've got your code written out, so you can just press a button and go. So I would encourage you to think about writing a registered report now, especially if you can't collect data. And you may have seen on Twitter that Chris Chambers has put out a call for rapid evaluation of COVID-19 related registered reports. And I thought I'd give you a quick update. So top lines are that there have been 4 full submissions so far. So 2 from psychology, 1 from chemistry, and 1 from immunology. The psychology and chemistry submissions have received in principle acceptance, and they received that in 6 to 7 days. And the chemistry registered report was the first one that we've had in chemistry. Those all had 3 to 4 reviewers plus specialist editorial input. There are also several additional submissions that are at various pre-submission stages, and I know that Chris is working with authors in lots of fields that are unfamiliar with registered reports to get their submissions ready. I'm not suggesting that you start researching the virus. The main takeaway from this slide is that now is a good time to write a registered report. Perhaps we can talk about some of the specifics around submitting a registered report right now during the Q&A session. So I hope that at least one of these 10 reasons has given you the impetus to write a registered report, and these resources will help you. So the first one is the information hub for all things registered reports. There you'll find more details of the workflow for registered reports, and you'll find a list of all of the journals, more than 240, that accept registered reports. The second link is to 10 questions that you can use to help build a registered report. And this has been put together by Chris Chambers. So if you can answer these 10 questions, you can write a registered report. Katie Drax's Shiny app gives you more information about registered reports. So if you want to drill down into the detail and find out, for example, which journals accept registered reports on meta-analyses, you can find that information there. And then there are a couple of databases where you can have a look at both stage 1 protocols and full stage 2 registered reports. So if you want to have a look at what's been done in your area to give you an idea of what a registered report looks like in your area, those are the places to start. And finally, the last link is to Registered Reports Now, which is a campaign that's been set up to increase the number of journals accepting registered reports. So if a journal that you're interested in submitting to doesn't already accept registered reports, you can use the templates and letters to editors here to encourage that journal to sign up to registered reports. Here are some additional links that might also be interesting. And finally, I just want to thank these people who have made their presentations open and allowed me to be inspired by them for my presentation today. Thank you.